tonight, we'll be looking at the economy and how things are being handled on the Tinubu government. Of course, let's begin by reviewing what has been said by Vice President Kashim Shettima. He was being quoted to have said yesterday, the Vice President Kashim Shettima has disclosed that his principal president, Bola Tinubu, subsidized the 2024 Hajj with about 90 billion naira. He said that when he represented President Tinubu to flag off the inaugural airlift of the 2024 Hajj exercise from Nigeria to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia at the Sir Ahmadu Bello International Airport in Birnin Kebbi yesterday. Also, the federal government says there are no plans to illegally access worker savings and pension contributions. There were reports that the federal government plans to hop from the pension and life insurance to develop infrastructure in the country. But the Minister of Finance was clarifying, becoming attributed to him, and he says that the government will not illegally access the savings and pensions of workers. He did say there are rules and regulations to the management of citizens' pension and insurance, and that will not be flouted under the Tinubu government. Let's get some insight into all of these issues. 90 billion naira is just perhaps what has been subsidized for Hajj pilgrimage by the Nigerian government. The Vice President is quoted to have said so. At some point, I will let you listen directly to him and how exactly he said it. But let's get some insight on this one. I'm being joined by Nigerian entrepreneur, economics, and of course, finance banker, and the founder of Stanbic IBTC, Mr. Atedo Peterside, who joins us virtually from Lagos. Thank you so much indeed, Mr. Peterside. It's good to see you tonight. All right, good. Let's begin the conversation. I'd like to know your view.
Yeah.
Well, I guess you can hear me. I can hear you, actually. All right. Let me get your view as an economist. Give us your understanding, because this subsidies on pilgrimage, how much of an impact, or what do you make of that kind of gesture of the government on that kind of endeavor?
Yes, I think I heard this story about 90 billion being used to subsidize the Hajj, the pilgrimage. And my first reaction was that I hope it's not true, but not because I have anything against a singular item called pilgrimage, but because of the wider implication in terms of economies in deep trouble. The government is trying to convince people that they inherited a difficult economy and that they are trying to correct the mistakes of the past. And it gets very worrying when, as you say, you are trying to correct the mistakes of the past. Every now and again, you repeat another mistake of the past, thereby sending a conflicting signal that perhaps you're not serious about trying to correct all past mistakes. So it's like saying, as soon as investors and everybody is about to take them very seriously, they do something else that causes everybody to worry. And this is not the first item. So it's one in a series. That's why I said we're not just discussing, it's just the latest one. And we remember the SUVs that they spent a fortune on buying luxury SUVs. You remember the Jamboree trip to New York, the Jamboree trip to Dubai, you know, supplementary budgets last year that came out with items that nobody understood why they were a priority. So I'm just saying there's part of a trend. So this is the latest one, you know, and it's important that when these things come out, that people come out and criticize and react, so that hopefully this kind of nonsense will stop very soon.
Well, when we wonder, Nigeria is a religious country, when we wonder, and I'll get some statistics out on how much Nigeria spend on religious pilgrimage, both to Jerusalem or to some of those who would go to Turkey and those who would go to Saudi Arabia and the rest part of the world for religious purposes. And we know government all over the world spend, they help citizens who cannot afford some things in their lives. And that's the reason why subsidies are being introduced for government to help and cushion the effect of the cost of aspect of the lives and the economy of the citizen. Are you saying that government should not have any business in subsidizing religious pilgrimage?
Yes, look, I agree. Let me just make it very, very clear. No politics to nobody. I understand a little bit about religion. I don't know of any religion that says that the person who cannot afford it should go on a pilgrimage. There's no religion that can prescribe that. So, so what you expect is that only people who can afford something should even dream of going on a privilege. So how does the issue of subsidy come in? If you can't afford it, you stay at home and pray to the Almighty, and He'll probably answer your prayers equally well. And this is not about helping the poor, because the kind of people who can afford to even dream of going for pilgrimage in 2024 invariably are middle class or upper middle class. So I can even understand if you are saying you want to subsidize the very poor in terms of making sure they have food to eat or they have education for their children, something that you can say is vital and futuristic, or health, subsidize them or give them health care. But this is basically subsidizing the middle class and upper middle class, who probably are only getting this subsidy because they have political clout. So the point I'm making is that you cannot rob the poor in Nigeria to reward the middle class and upper middle class in the name of religion. Don't think we're all that stupid. We're not.
I mean, we see this happen every other time. Federal lawmakers, state governments. In fact, this is somewhat a culture for people to be gathered and being sponsored for different kind of pilgrimage. It's become more or less part and parcel of governance. It's become more or less a duty of politicians to the citizens of Nigeria. And then, of course, we have the pilgrimage boards, the different religions. So, I mean, for you, and if you look at all the other crimes, are you saying that this is peculiar to Nigeria? And do you think that it's harmful to our economy?
I didn't hear you very well, but I think let me make a comment that I think is tangential to the words that I think I heard. Look, I'm saying that this is not about religion, really, it's about politics. We are mixing religion and politics. So what do you expect the Christians now to do? Say they want their own share of this subsidy. How are you going to refuse them? This is all about politics. Perhaps somebody feels that, oh, this is time for me to score some cheap political points vis-a-vis future election support. So you now come and almost send wrong signals about our economy at the time when our economy is in deep trouble. When I say deep trouble, really deep trouble, we need to dig ourselves out of a hole. And our best effort, or the best method to dig ourselves out of a hole, is to overall behave in a manner that is consistent and send signals to the whole world, including Nigerians at home, that look, this government is serious. We're trying to curb waste. We're trying to correct all past mistakes. So each time you turn around and fiddle something like this significant and basically throw away 90 billion, what you're doing is that you scored an own goal. You've set back the process by which investors and others can take you seriously and begin to think, let's take a bet on Nigeria. So that's why, for me, it's not about just religion and pilgrimage. It is a setback for the economy by sending the wrong signals. And the government should stop sending wrong signals. I'm even willing to give them credit and pretend that, oh, it's a brand new government. They came in May last year. They have nothing to do with the previous APC government. Then show us that you are different by upholding higher standards. That is what makes the difference.
In 2023, there was a report released that about 4,771 persons went on religious pilgrimage in Nigeria. And the Punch reported at that time that in that figure, the governors in the different states of the Federation spent about 2.53 billion to sponsor Christian pilgrims and 7.35 billion on their Muslim counterparts, Muslim pilgrims. In 2022, 1.5 billion was spent on the sponsorship of Christian pilgrims, and 3.403 billion sponsored, was a sponsored fee for Muslim pilgrims on Hajj. And so not only the federal government has this kind of culture or this sort of obligation, but state governments too.
I'm not hearing you pretty well. I think we have a sound problem, but I heard you mentioning some figures. I don't know if you can repeat the question, but I think I couldn't make out what you were saying.
Okay, let me quickly go over it. There was a report last year which showed that governments in the different states of the Federation had sponsored, about 13 of them actually, had spent about 14 billion naira to sponsor about 4,771 persons. That in 2023. In 2022, the similar thing was done by the state government. They are spent on both Christians and Muslim pilgrimage. And these are state governments alone. I'm just trying to put out some figures to say, look, federal government on its own is doing that, and state governments across board are also doing the same, both Christian and Muslims.
If I think I heard what you said, you're trying to make out like we spent some money like this before at state government level and also at federal level or something like that. But let me just make it very clear. I'm not concerned about what has happened before. It is the wrong things we did before that put us in our present predicament. So I'm concerned about a government that claims it's a corrective government, behaving like a corrective government and leading by example. And I'm concerned particularly at the federal level, because it's the federal government that sends the signal that states can follow or copy from. And everything that we've heard about this 90 billion earmarked for the Hajj subsidy, runs counter to the overall message the government has been trying to send on the economy and its own attempt to correct the ills of the past. I think enough said.
The fact that, this is not an only federal government's kind of culture, but I was asking, does this sponsoring of pilgrimage, does it have some kind of harm or danger for our economy?
Yes, I think, if you can hear me, I think I was trying to explain that the danger it has is that, in my opinion, it delays the type of economic recovery we're looking for. And let me explain, because it's about policy inconsistency. What investors are looking for before coming to plow back their resources to reactivate the economy is policy consistency. The government showing them that they are doing all the right things, putting in place the right policies, right coordination between fiscal and monetary policy. As we are coordinating fiscal and monetary policy, all of a sudden we hear one wild directive coming out. It cannot be from central bank because they don't have the authority. It cannot even be from Ministry of Finance by themselves, because a budget is something that's a political product. It comes out of the legislature and the executive. So who is coming out suddenly to subsidize Hajj at this time in 2024? So basically what you're doing is that the damage to the economy is that the jury is still out. Many people are trying to wait and see whether this government is serious, whether Nigeria has turned the corner, whether Nigeria is serious. Each time you do these things, you destroy confidence and make them believe that these guys have not changed. They are just as responsible as some in the past. And we want to improve. This is not about politics or political parties. I want to see every government in Nigeria better than the previous one. and significantly so. And we have to challenge things like this when they come out and nip them in the bud, so that the next time anybody is thinking about this sort of thing at federal or state level, we expect the citizens to come out and challenge them.
Let me get you to the nature of the Naira. Are you worried about what is happening to the Naira? For some weeks, it looked like Naira appreciated against the dollar and was doing very well. In the parallel market, in the last few days, it's been doing badly. What are your biggest fears about the undulating nature and the dancing of the Naira, a bad dance and a poor performance it has had in the past few days, Mr. Peterside?
You know, Shem, I'll tell you the gospel truth. If you go back to when the government came out to stop the destructive multiple exchange rates, we all knew the Naira had to depreciate. Because what we had before was a joke. The former CBN governor and the last government fixed the Naira at an artificial level. They didn't meet the demand for dollars. They only gave their friends at a false exchange rate. So people started talking, experts were talking, saying things like, oh, the Naira is undervalued, it will stabilize at 700 Naira. I told them they were joking. 800 Naira, I said they were joking. People are not looking at the quantity of Naira that the previous government created or printed. Personally, I expected the market initially to stabilize around 1,500 Naira to a dollar. I told enough of people to so. The central bank governor knows my views that I expect the Naira today at best to stabilize between 1,300 and 1,400 Naira to a dollar. You don't have to agree with me, but I tell you what, if you honestly think that the correct exchange rate is 1,000 Naira to $1, I will buy your dollars from you. Put your money where your mouth is. So the point I'm making is that the exchange rate problem, I'll be fair to this government, they inherited a problem. And what they've been doing is trying to manage it. And initially, I would have thought, first get some stability around 1,300, 1,400. Don't be in a hurry to appreciate the exchange rate, going to sell dollars to bureau the exchange at 1,100, 1,050. Those guys just turn around and sell it 2 weeks later for 1,400, 1,500, and they go away laughing. What's the point of that? It's better to have some stability that you can sustain. Keep it between 1,300 and 1,400, which looks to be the natural equilibrium band today. Keep it there for a while. Build up your reserves. Let confidence come back. And also stop doing things that frighten investors, like throwing 90 billion at the Hajj and all these funny things as buying luxury SUVs and so on. Show some seriousness. Eventually, confidence will come back. Perhaps we will then move after the reserves start rising. We will not be able to move from that 1,300, 1,400 Naira to a dollar. I don't believe for 1 second, and you can quote me, you can abuse me. I don't believe for 1 second that the Naira is undervalued at 1,300 to a dollar or 1,400 to a dollar. People don't seem to understand the sheer quantum of Naira that was created by an irresponsible government, previous one that we're suffering from now. So there's a huge Naira overhang chasing scarce dollars. And so it's futile to try and appreciate the Naira in the hurry. It's not going to work. So let's bite the bullet, start doing all the right things. The journey back is a slow and painful one. It's a journey of 1,000 miles. Take each correct step every day and stop this gymnastics of doing 5 things right and doing 2 things wrong thereafter.
Let me jump in quickly and let's take a look at some of the policies of this government. First and foremost, I'd like to know, Mr. Peterside, is the Tinubu government on the right track in terms of the direction they are going with the economy? Those who have criticized the government of trying to follow the IMF and the World Bank and the West kind of call on how the economy should go, they've criticized the increase in levies and tariffs and the manner in which they say that they're putting more burden on the average citizen. Do you think that this government is on the right track?
I would say that the direction of monetary policy is on the right track. The overall direction of fiscal policy, trying to do away with unaffordable subsidies being thrown at largely at the elite is on the right track. But what is on the wrong track is the huge fiscal indiscipline that comes out from the top every now and again. That's the one that's on the wrong track. And you see, you have to do everything right. It's not enough for the finance minister to do the right thing and the CPF governor to do the right thing. And in the meantime, we're playing politics and destroying what they're building or what they're trying to correct. I mean, these are my views. And what I'm telling you is that the government is doing some right things, but waking up every now and again, like every 2 weeks on average, and doing something that is completely wrong, thereby destroying their own good work. Meanwhile, what we want is a series of correct steps in the right direction with no policy somersaults and reversals in terms of policy direction and fiscal discipline. I consider 90 billion suddenly thrown out at the Hajj as evidence of fiscal indiscipline, gross fiscal indiscipline. So I've answered your question. They're doing many things right. They're doing many things right. Unfortunately, they insist on also doing many things wrong.
I mean, what would you say are some of the things that they are doing wrong?
Okay, perhaps you didn't hear me, and I gave you examples. Look, go back and check. In 2012, when the economy was booming, President Gigi's government, go and check what cars they bought for senators and House of Rep members. Toyota Camry, a modest Toyota Camry. In 2023, when the economy is in a deep hole, go and check what these legislators, with the executive not complaining, decided to buy for themselves, luxury SUVs. So here's an economy where, when we were booming, we bought modest cars for legislators. When we said there was no money and we were tightening the belts and squeezing citizens, the legislators decided to exempt themselves. Executives did not complain and were buying themselves luxury cars. What kind of nonsense is that? So we are giving more to the legislators during difficult hard times than they got in boom times. Does that make sense to you? That's one example. I gave you the other one, the supplementary budget that came out last year. Go and look at the items they were going to spend money on. Vice president's residence in Lagos, all kinds of things. What is the vice president looking for residence in Lagos for? Let him stay in Abuja. If you come to Lagos, he can stay in a hotel. President Goodluck Jonathan was staying sometimes in a co-hotel, presidential suite. But stop wasting money on these things. So I can go on and on. Look at the money that was spent, I said earlier, on the trip to New York. You take hundreds of people to New York and incur phenomenal bills. You carry people to Dubai and incur phenomenal bills. Okay, they turned around, I'll be honest. I'll be fair to them. Later on, I said, no more of these wasteful foreign trips. They're going to control trips and so on. But you didn't have to take us down that ruinous path first before coming back to do the correct thing. And now that they've announced the correct thing in terms of controlling those trips, I hope they will stay because we're in a difficult situation. And this economy is not going to recover with the government doing flip-flops.
I wanted to know your view on these tariffs, electricity tariff. We heard about cybersecurity levy, although the government has moved back on that and reversed it and said it's suspended for now. The minimum wage, the government came with 48,000. The labor says no. If you were in president, you know, it's not the easiest time for any leader of Nigeria at this point. I mean, difficult decisions to make. If you were in President Tinubu's shoes, what do you think would be the reasonable figure for minimum wage in this country as of today?
You know, if I thank God I'm not the president, but whoever is the president asked for the job. There were three major candidates that came out in the last election going by INEC results. There was APC, there was PDP, there was Labour candidates. Interestingly, if you look at the manifestos, they all said similar things about doing away with multiple exchange rates. They all talked about an unsustainable petrol subsidy they were going to remove or phase out. So they all said the same things. The difference is in the execution and in the quality of the execution. So there was never going to be a difference in terms of policy pronouncements. It was in the quality of the execution. And that is where some of us are disappointed, because we expected a better quality of execution from this government than we have seen to date. Because execution is key. It's not just policy direction. And you must lead by example. And from what I've told you so far, the examples I've given, these most wasteful expenditures have endorsements all the way at the top of the political party in power. Something must be wrong. Somebody should call them together and say, hey guys, you cannot tell the citizenry to pay more for everything while giving yourself, while ascribing luxury to yourself, a higher level of luxury than we even had during boom years to yourselves. The belt tightening must be from top to bottom. In fact, it should be the top that should set the example and cut down on most of their own perks. And if that was happening, Nigerians would take it more seriously. Nigerians have been bearing pain. In fact, I'm amazed how much pain they've been bearing. But what gets them angry is seeing those in power who don't live by example, who are still carrying out wasteful expenditures.
We seem to have multiple problems on multiple fronts. Inflation is rising and rising. 33.6%, Mr. Peterside. That is the latest figure at the end of April coming out. And that is staggering. You look at it and you look at food inflation, headline inflation. These things are not going down, they're going up. And you see that the Naira also is not doing well. What must we do so that this bleeding will stop?
Answer you on inflation, because that is the one that's probably most painful, because it's one thing not having enough income for a poor person and the prices are rising. You know, one thing about inflation is that whenever the exchange rate adjusted to a market level, you are going to have upward movement in inflation. But that was a one-time movement. Also, the monetary policy direction is right in terms of making sure that you do not increase interest rates. That also helps to cool the forex market. But that exchange rate, like I said earlier, it can, if it stabilizes at 1,300, 1,400, and if it stays there for 1 year, then guess what? There's no more exchange rate movement influencing prices, because that one is now zero. So the inflation you expected an initial increase, and if you behave well, inflation will come down, and will come down rapidly if you show discipline and behave well. We have brought inflation down before in this country at various times. It's been done all over the world. It can happen again. You saw US inflation was 10%, it's down to 3 point something. Bringing the inflation rate can come down very rapidly over the next 12 months. It can come down rapidly if you're doing the right things. But if you start doing the wrong things on top of where we are, then all hell will let loose. So the point I'm making to you is that inflation hike was expected, but it should be temporary if you're doing the right things. You should then progressively bring the inflation rate down. And over 18 months, you can bring it down significantly. That is the correct destination. And there's no shortcut for bringing down inflation. I repeat, there is no shortcut.
Just a moment. I know you are a band A user of electricity in Nigeria, and you perhaps are paying more. What would be your advice with this electricity tariff? The disco, the NEC, they got visitors. Their offices picketed by the Nigerian labor leaders. What would be your advice in the face of the challenges in the electricity sector and the tariff that is being introduced by government? They're saying on one hand, some of these discos, they cannot run them properly. The government is now coming into the fray. What is the way out?
You know, for the electricity sector, you need a holistic solution. You have to have all the players in the room, and the government itself must get serious. The truth is that you are never going to have stable electricity available for the whole of Nigeria with low tariffs. Part of the reason the telephones work is because the tariffs went up. So you are never going to solve the problem with low tariffs. In any case, the bulk of the subsidy was going to the richest consumers in the power sector. That is the reality. And that was making it impossible, because the system was not based on cost recovery. It made it impossible for the discos to invest and to provide meters and everything else. You should bring people around the table. You can have a holistic solution. Getting constant electricity available to a populace is not rocket science. It's been done by so many countries in the world, including Djibouti and all kinds of places. What happens in Nigeria is that we are always trying to game the system. Somebody shows up and tries to fiddle something that makes it unviable for gas producers to supply gas for power. Somebody comes to fiddle something to make it impossible for one segment of that value chain to be productive. We need to have a healthy value chain that is based on cost-reflective tariffs. That's the general rule. Now let me continue. But you can do that and still subsidize the poorest consumers, because unlike petrol, where it's difficult to differentiate at the petrol pump who is a rich consumer, who is a poor consumer. For electricity, you can take care of that. It's very simple. If we had meters, you can make the first 1,000 units or whatever units of power consumed very cheap. A poor man only consumes 1,000 units, so he pays that low tariff. As you consume more, you can increase the unit charge. So that therefore a very wealthy man with 7 air conditioners and all sorts of things, his own tariff for the higher units of consumption can now rise dramatically. Likewise, in the industrial sector, the big consumers of power, because it's volume related, you can make their cost per unit they're consuming a lot higher. So the point I'm making is that electricity is one of those sectors that makes it possible for you to actually subsidize the very poor. Because invariably they have a single meter, they consume very little. So you can make it available to them at a very low price. That's why I say we need a holistic solution. Not just people just getting around, they consult nobody. All these studies have been done before. Power sector reform was not designed by this government. If anything, the APC government came in, I held it back for almost 8 years. So that the problem is not as if there is something unique about the sector. It's just that we simply refuse to play by the rules and pursue holistic solutions. And let's do so now. And I repeat, subsidizing the poorest of the poor is possible in the power sector.
Mr. Peterside, I'd like to anchor with you on this conversation on the issue of crude oil, alternatives, our refineries, production, and how we need to rev up oil production, which could help as the mainstay of the economy, help our revenue. And we saw, of course, that the major challenge that this government faced was the issue of subsidy, and it affected the bottom line. Just in about 30 seconds, if you can wrap up. How much of the kind of medicine that we can apply in all of these challenges, crude oil, subsidies, and oil production, to really, really help this government? It's going to be 1 year in office in a few days.
Well, let me summarize with a single tip I want the government. They should be very careful how they believe everything they're told by NNPC. NNPC promises and never delivers. We should not make the mistake of allowing NNPC to have a stranglehold on this sector forever, where the sector will not move forward. Where the refineries they said they're going to reopen. I'm not picking them out to embarrass them, but it's a fact. So I'm saying that again, you have an economic team, go back to them and free this economy from the shackles of NNPC. Because they are not the way forward. They will never be in fact, they are the problem. Quote me. They are the problem.
Mr. Peterside.
Because they control almost everything. They're the ones who decide what fuel comes in, at what price. They have basically crowded out through the policies they put in place. They've crowded out everybody from inactivities. Years ago, if you remember, NNPC was made to sell its own downstream subsidiaries like National Oil and Uni Petrol. Now they've come back and they're even the ones now acquiring private companies. And when they acquire them, they're inefficient. They're taking the country down the route of an inefficient monopoly. Terribly inefficient. Go and look at the accounts of the refineries. You're incurring horrendous costs, producing no revenue, hiring armies of people, thousands of people. What do they have in common, those people? They are the human beings, those with political clout. The poor man cannot get admission into NNPC today. You can't get a poor man's son into NNPC today. It's the children of the rich. They've cornered it and they go in there and they make they decide what goes on. They're wasteful. You know, it cannot go on like this. And I know that I hope this government will get there.
It's so good to speak to you and get some of these perspective and insights on our economy. Thank you so much indeed, Mr. Atedo, Peterside, entrepreneur, investment banker, economist, and the founder of IBTC Bank PLC. Thank you so much indeed for your time tonight.
Thank you, Shem.